Hey, what's up guys, it's your boy KCM What Ifs. Today we are gonna be reading The Turn of a Hero, or What If Naruto Left Jiraiya and Betrayed Konoha. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Mikoto sat quietly and merely stared at the moving water within the small stream before her, an unreadable look on her face at the moment. Sasuke was a few feet away behind her, leaning against a tree with his eyes closed. Neither said a word to each other. Not that they needed to. They simply enjoyed the company of each other, something that neither thought would be possible again. Not even Mikoto. Especially with everything that was currently taking place. But this is almost over now, thought Mikoto, still gazing at the moving water in silence. Funny, she thought with an internal smile, I never thought that things would actually end this way. Although, I would have preferred if some things had happened differently. An image of Itachi came to her mind at this thought. She had buried her pain deep within herself when Itachi had sacrificed himself to help Sasuke obtain the eternal Mangekyo. But in a way, it had also made her very happy. Itachi could never have gone against Konoha, thought Mikoto with a small and silent sigh. He still cared for it, even after what he went through and what they did to Kushina. Allowing for Sasuke to fight him and hopefully defeat him was the only way that he could have helped us. You were such a fool, Itachi. But you were also my son. Sasuke glanced at his mother's back momentarily before closing his eyes yet again. He could tell that something was troubling her but decided against asking her. He knew for a fact that she wouldn't tell him what she was thinking of if she didn't want to, even if he asked. That was just how she was. Well, would you look at that? It sure has been a while, you too. Sasuke sighed as White Zetsu appeared from within the ground next to him, a small grin on his face. Mikoto turned her head back to glance at him. I thought that you were in aim with Mito. I was, but it wasn't as interesting as I thought it would be, answered White Zetsu with a chuckle. This guy has problems, thought Sasuke. I see, said Mikoto, turning her back on White Zetsu. And you? Asked White Zetsu. What exactly are you doing at the moment? Before Mikoto could answer, a vortex appeared right beside her. A few moments later, one Uchiha Obito appeared, rubbing the back of his head as well. Mikoto sighed while shaking her head. And here I was enjoying my peace and quiet in the early morning, she muttered while standing up, stretching her arms for a bit. Hearing her last comment made the newly arrived Obito shrug. I'm sorry, he said with no real meaning behind it. Just forget it, said Mikoto with a sigh, crossing her arms under her bigger than average chest. So? What are you doing here? Obito smirked at his fellow Uchiha member. What? Didn't you miss me? I mean, I have been gone for quite a while after all. Mikoto simply stared at him with a blank look on her face. Obito teached at this. You know, you're no fun at all, Mikoto. Even after you've gotten laid by Dash. Finish that statement and consider your balls gone, Obito, interrupted Mikoto with narrowed eyes. Listening to this made Sasuke narrow his eyes as well but didn't comment. White Zetsu merely chuckled as he watched all of this occur. Obito placed both of his arms behind his head and turned away from the angry-looking Mikoto. Whatever, I'm just simply curious as to why you're just sitting here doing nothing. I mean, isn't the war supposed to start soon or something, said Obito with a curious look on his face. The Raikage is on his way to Kyumo along with both of his shinobi, replied Mikoto while looking back at the running stream of water. And the Jinchuriki? Asked Obito with a raised eyebrow. Mikoto tilted her head to the forest that stood behind the tree that Sasuke was currently leaning on. They're over there along with Sasuchan's little group for the moment, just simply waiting right now. Sasuchan's eyebrows twitched in annoyance at that. I'm surprised the Raikage agreed to that, muttered Obito. Mikoto smirked. He didn't. He's still under my genjutsu if you haven't forgotten. Oh yeah, said Obito with a chuckle. I almost forgot about that. I just don't feel like going back to Kumo anymore, stated Mikoto. Their usefulness is almost at an end after all. But there is a small problem though. Obito raised an eyebrow for a second time. And what problem is that? Mikoto closed her eyes for a moment before answering. It's that shinobi that's apparently Kumo's best at the moment. Darui, I think his name is. It seems that he's getting suspicious that the Raikage is not himself. Obito rubbed his chin in contemplation at hearing this latest information. Now that is a problem. If Kumo found out that their Raikage is being controlled, it could pose a big problem for us. The good news though is that he doesn't have any solid proof of this yet, even if it is true, continued Mikoto with a smirk. Still, this could become more troublesome, replied Obito with a sigh. We just need to make sure that he doesn't find any solid evidence until the war is finished, retorted Mikoto. She then shrugged. After that, Kumo will be nothing to us any longer. She's referring to the incident with Kushina, thought Obito, remembering when Kumo had tried to kidnap Kushina in the past. I wonder though. Does Naruto know of it? Then what will you do for the time being? Asked White Zetsu. Wait for all the others to be ready, answered Mikoto. I see. Said Obito, turning to glance at Sasuke for a moment before starting to walk away. Do tell me when everything is ready then, would you? He said, throwing back a small wave with his hand behind him. Mikoto didn't respond as Obito disappeared with his teleportation jutsu. I wonder, thought Mikoto with narrowed eyes, just what have you been up to, Obito? Before she could contemplate this further, a vibration from her right side of her hip caught her attention, making her smile. So he found it. Reaching for the small round disc, Mikoto held it in front of her with her hand as a holographic figure appeared on it. I must say, Mikoto, how you placed this thing on me, I'll probably never know. Recognizing the voice, Mikoto immediately smirked and threw the holographic figure a wink. It's a secret. Sasuke could only shake his head. So she got the dobe too, eh? She sure is sneaky. Naruto's holographic form could only sigh. How did you know that I would find it? He asked. Mikoto continued to smirk. Call it a woman's intuition, she answered. Naruto shook his head. In any case, this simply makes things easier. I have something for you to do for me, Mikoto. Mikoto raised an eyebrow. And that is? I need for you to attack Konoha, stated Naruto with an unreadable tone. That statement caused different reactions. Mikoto for her part simply stared at Naruto's figure on the small disc with a calm look on her face. White Zetsu made an O shape with his mouth, a surprise clearly present in his face. And Sasuke. About damn time, thought Sasuke with an eager look on his face. This is what he had been waiting for. Now that Danzo was dead, that only left the other two elders. Well them, and the rest of the Konoha as well. Are you sure about this? Asked Mikoto with an emotionless tone in her voice. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I am. Take the army that Kumo has prepared. It will be more than enough. Kiri will be used in case Suna or even Iwa tries to join in. What's with the sudden change in plan? Asked Mikoto, not sure if rushing things would be for the best. Naruto was silent for a few moments before responding. There is just something that I need to confirm as soon as possible. And Konoha has the answer, somewhere. I just need to find it. By attacking it? Questioned Mikoto. Naruto shrugged. I'll admit it, I'm also getting kind of impatient. I've stalled long enough. But like I've said, I need to confirm something. That is all. I see. Said Mikoto, closing her eyes and nodding. I understand then. It will be done. Naruto nodded as well before his image on the disc disappeared. Mikoto then placed the disc back to where it had been before. Now that is quite a surprise, said White Zetsu with a chuckle. But it's a good one, retorted Sasuke as he walked forward until he was in front of his mother. Shall we get started? Mikoto glanced at her son and smirked. Yeah, we shall. White Zetsu chuckled once more. It seems that I was right in coming here after all. This place brings back memories, doesn't it? Obito chuckled as he looked at the waterfall running in front of him from his spot on top of Madara's head. Not really. I rather forgot them all. Black Zetsu glanced to his side to look at the sitting Obito who had one leg hanging off the edge of Madara's head. That is unfortunate then, said Black Zetsu. Obito didn't respond to that. He merely sat there in silence at the same spot where Madara and Hashirama had once fought many years ago. What will you do with Kakashi? Obito glanced at Black Zetsu before turning his gaze back to the waterfall. Why does that matter to you? He questioned. Black Zetsu merely shrugged. Curiosity, I suppose. Obito grinned slightly before it vanished. Don't worry about that. I will kill him when he's no longer useful to me, if that's what you're asking. Black Zetsu didn't respond. Obito turned to look towards the rising sun. I just need something from him, and once I get it, I will kill him. That is all there is to it. I no longer consider him my comrade. That thought has been dead ever since I decided to join Madara. I thought all you wanted was your eye, commented Black Zetsu. That was just half of the truth, thought Obito, but didn't say it out loud. Instead, he remained quiet. Seeing that Obito wasn't going to answer, Black Zetsu started to retreat back into the ground. I hope that you don't start to have any doubts about what you have chosen, Obito. With that, Black Zetsu disappeared completely into the ground. Doubt, thought Obito with a frown as he closed his eyes. A few moments later, he smirked darkly, opening his eyes as well. His Mangekyo spun wildly. I don't regret a single thing. Kushina currently stood by the rail in front of one of the many ships in Kiri's navy, the only military navy in the entire elemental nations. The navy was currently stationed in one of the many harbors in Kiri for the moment. About half of Kiri's army would be transported by the navy while the rest would travel by land. It would be too risky if the whole army traveled together after all. The army's manpower would be split, true. But it would have to be done this way. Kushina looked down at the water to see her own reflection reflected back at her. The face that she saw was currently frowning. And why was that? She didn't really know the answer to that, although she already knew the answer in a way. It dealt with Naruto, her son. That much was obvious to her. But it didn't answer the question entirely. Kushina sighed. I'm just too overprotective, she thought. He's no longer a kid that needs babysitting. He's already shown me multiple times that he can take care of himself. And yet. Troubled, are you? Startled, Kushina looked behind her to see a solemn-looking Terumi Mei. I didn't sense her, thought Kushina. But then again, I was probably too engrossed in my own thoughts. Finally paying attention to what she had just been asked, Kushina nodded. Yes, I am. Mei simply nodded as she walked forward until she was right beside her fellow redhead. I take it that it has something to do with your son. Kushina could only look at Mei in surprise. How did you know? Mei chuckled and shrugged slightly. It doesn't take more than a few minutes of seeing you two together for a person to realize that you care for him deeply. I'm that obvious then, muttered Kushina with a small grin. Mei glanced at Kushina. I'm not judging you either. I have no right to do that. What you choose to do is entirely up to you. But I find myself curious. Mei then smirked. Just how did you end up falling for your own son? Despite her wishes, Kushina felt her face heat up. Why do you want to know something like that? She asked, mentally cursing herself for the slip-up. Mei simply shrugged again. Like I've said, I'm curious. Kushina turned her face away from the giddy-looking Mizukage. She was silent for a few moments, making Mei think that she wasn't going to answer her. I don't know. Finally answered Kushina with a sigh. That's just how things turned out. In the beginning, our relationship was nothing more than that of a mother and son. But as time went on, I felt myself start thinking of him as more than a son. Maybe it's just how we were separated for almost 16 years, that me and him never did develop a true mother-son relationship. Do you regret your choice? Asked Mei with a raised eyebrow. No, I don't, answered Kushina without missing a heartbeat. I can honestly say that it's the best choice that I've made in my life. There you have it then, said Mei with a smile. If that's how you feel, then don't look so down. I'm sure that Naruto must feel the same way. Just stop worrying too much. Simply go with the flow. That's the easiest way and perhaps the least painful. Just go with the flow, repeated Kushina within her mind. I suppose that shouldn't be too difficult. So this is where you were. Both Kushina and Mei turned around to see an approaching Yagura. What is it? Asked Mei. The final preparations have been finished, answered Yagura as he stopped in front of both of the redheads. The army is now ready and at your disposal. Mei nodded, obviously pleased to hear that. Well done. I suppose that all that's needed now is for Kumo to give the signal, or should I say Naruto. I don't think that you will have to wait long, commented Kushina with a thoughtful look. I'm sure that everyone else feels the same way. That's the time to get started. Before either Mei or Yagura could reply, Kushina reached into one of her pockets in her jacket, taking out a small round disc in the process that was currently vibrating. This is... muttered Kushina. Yagura chuckled while watching this. So she got Kushina-san too, eh? Really, how does she do it? A waving figure appeared on the disc the next second. Hello Kushina. Recognizing the voice, Kushina raised an eyebrow in surprise. Mikoto, when did you dash? Don't worry about that, interrupted Mikoto with a wave of her hand. I'm sure that you must know that a woman must have some secrets. It's what keeps life interesting after all. Kushina chuckled lightly. Yeah, I suppose you're right about that. Mikoto also chuckled for a moment before turning serious. Naruto has already told me what he wants for us to do. Now that statement brought the curiosity forward of all those that were present. And that is? Asked Mei with a questioning look. Mikoto was silent for a moment before responding. He wants Kumo to invade Konoha. What? Exclaimed Kushina. Why so soon? Mikoto shrugged. I don't know. All he told me was that there is something that he wants to confirm, whatever that means. Kushina was silent at that. She too didn't know what Naruto had meant by saying that. Just what did he want to confirm? What did you do, Naruto-kun? She wondered to herself, remembering how he had said that there was something that he needed to do. And what of Kiri? Asked Mei, making Kushina come out of her thoughts. You're back up in case either Suna or Iwa interferes, answered Mikoto in an even tone. So we're not to join in then, commented Yagura with a frown. I wouldn't be too sure about that, retorted Mikoto. I'm sure that, at the very least, Suna will interfere. Especially with the Kazekage that they have at the moment. I see your point, muttered Yagura. Is that all? Asked Mei. Mikoto nodded. Yes, it is. Make sure that you're ready at the moment's notice. It's critical that we don't fail here. We'll be waiting, stated Mei with conviction. Mikoto didn't respond. She simply sent Kushina one final glance before her holographic image on the disc disappeared. Mei turned around to face Yagura. Have the ground forces move to the border at once. I'm sure that it won't take long for the forces in Kumo to begin their attack. We need to be ready at once. Yagura nodded. I understand. With that, he walked away, intent on carrying his orders from Mei. Now that was something that Yagura had never expected to do. I suppose things really do change, thought Yagura with a chuckle as he walked away. Mei turned to look at the quiet and slightly troubled Kushina. It seems that it is time. Kushina glanced at Mei for a moment, slightly nodding. Yeah, I suppose that you're right. Mei tilted her head towards one of the doors on the ship. Come on, I wouldn't mind getting some advice for our battle plan. Kushina didn't respond. She merely wordlessly followed behind the female Mizukage, many questions plaguing her mind at the moment. Tsunade scowled as she marched through one of the many halls within the Hokage Tower, heading towards her office. Behind her trailed a worried-looking Shizune and a calm-looking Shikaku and Ibiki. So you're telling me that there is more to Naruto killing Hayashi? Questioned Tsunade with a frown on her face. That the Gaki didn't do it just for the hell of it? We believe so, answered Shikaku. After all, someone obviously went through the trouble of making sure that we couldn't see as to what exactly happened that night. And they went through a lot of trouble to do so. It's unknown, continued Ibiki, handing Tsunade a small set of documents. Tsunade quickly scanned through all the pages, reading its contents. We haven't figured out as to what exactly it is as of yet, said Ibiki with a frown of his own. He didn't like the current situation at all at the moment. And it wasn't just because of what had happened with Hayashi's corpse. No, it was also because of the fact that Tsunade had returned by herself, no Kakashi or Kabuto in sight. And she was in a foul mood as well. But she hadn't told them yet as to what had occurred at the Kage meeting yet either, something that Ibiki did not like at all either. Ibiki glanced at Shikaku, who merely shook his head lightly as if to say, she will tell us eventually. Just have patience. Ibiki could only sigh. Tsunade then stopped abruptly, causing the other three to stop as well. Tsunade had her eyes narrowed, a large scowl on her face as well. Is there something wrong? Asked Shikaku with a raised eyebrow. This, began Tsunade, anger clearly present in her voice. I recognized this. Now that took the others by surprise. What is it then? Asked Ibiki, glad that at the very least they would have something in all of this. It's one of the many creations of our dear friend Orochimaru, said Tsunade with a heavy sigh, trying to calm herself. Sensei once sent me a whole stack of different types of poisons and the sort that they had discovered in Orochimaru's base when Sensei went to confront him. I was no longer part of the village at the time either, so I was reluctant. But in the end, he managed to convince me. This right here was one of those many things that I analyzed that day. So what is it? Asked Ibiki again. It's like a virus, answered Tsunade with a shake of her head. It was something that Orochimaru invented to make sure that none of his experiments ever got out once he was through with using his test subjects. He knew, of course, of the Yamanaka clan and their jutsu. This was his way to fight against that. All this is a bunch of killer cells that are implanted into a person's body that are meant to attack and to destroy the cells of the host's brain. They are triggered when any type of jutsu is used to access the host's brain and its contents. I see, thought Shikaku, his mind racing. The fact that this is one of Orochimaru's creations makes Kabuto an even larger suspect, but an image of Anko appeared in Shikaku's mind. Could Anko also be included in this? But then again, why would she do this? What would her motive be? That helps us, Tsunade-sama, said Ibiki. I suppose that with this, we can tell you who we suspect could be behind this. That brought Shikaku out of his thoughts. He looked at Ibiki for a moment before turning to Tsunade. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Oh? And who might that be? Kabuto, answered Ibiki without any hesitation. Shikaku stayed silent. Tsunade scowled, remembering what had happened at the Land of Iron during the Kage meeting. Kabuto is not the one who did this, said Tsunade with a shake of her head. And why is that? Questioned Ibiki. Because Naruto tried to kill him, responded Tsunade calmly. And so did I. Now that caused both Ibiki's and Shizune's eyes to widen. Now we're getting somewhere, thought Shikaku. Tsunade-sama, just what exactly happened at the Kage summit? if I may ask?" asked Shikaku. "Kabuto is no longer our ally," replied Tsunade. "But not because of this," she continued, bringing the stack of papers forward. "It's clearly obvious that he and Naruto are not working together. It could just be an act," muttered Ibiki. But Tsunade heard him. "It's not," stated Tsunade, turning to look at the scarred interrogator. "That I'm 100% positive of." "Why?" asked Shikaku. "I just am," answered Tsunade before pausing. "But because of this new latest revelation, the amount of suspects behind this is extremely shortened." Tsunade looked at Ibiki straight in the eyes. "I want you to start investigating Mitarashi Anko as soon as possible." Shizun gasped upon hearing that. "So she's thinking what I'm thinking," thought Shikaku. "But Tsunade-sama," protested Shizun, "you can't obviously believe that Anko could be a traitor. It's just not possible." "It is," retorted Tsunade, turning away from her shocked assistant. "At this point, I'm willing to follow the slightest hint if it could help us to stop Naruto. I am Hokage, Shizun. And I will protect this village. Ibiki, you have your orders." With that, Tsunade began to walk away. Ibiki merely nodded before turning to look at Shikaku. "Something tells me that you agree with her," he commented. "Anko is the only other person besides Kabuto that could have done this with something that Orochimaru created," stated Shikaku calmly. "I don't want to believe that she's a traitor, but as Tsunade-sama has just said, this is all we got for the moment. Now, we simply need to follow through with it." Ibiki stared at Shikaku for a moment before he too started to walk away to the opposite direction. Shizun for her part could only look at her masters retreating back before she too started to follow. "Hokage-sama." Tsunade turned around to see a running Yugao heading towards her. Ibiki stepped to the side to allow for the purple-haired Umbu to pass. "What is it?" asked Tsunade as Yugao stopped in front of her. "We have a problem in one of the prison levels," answered Yugao with distress clearly in her voice. "What happened?" asked Tsunade. In all honesty, she didn't really want to know. "All prisoners and guards on sub-level 3 have been found to be unconscious," responded Yugao. "An attempted escape?" questioned Tsunade. Yugao shook her head. "It doesn't seem like it. All of the prisoners have been accounted for, and there are no signs that anyone tried to break free." But what?" said Tsunade with a raised eyebrow. Yugao was silent for a moment before answering. "The Inuzuka clan has found both the scents of Anko and of snakes in one of the halls of the prison level." "Kabuto," thought both Tsunade and Shikaku who were listening. "Any bodies?" asked Shikaku as he started to walk towards them. Ibiki had also stayed to listen to what had happened. Yugao shook her head again. "No, no bodies at all. According to the Inuzukas that were sent to investigate, both of the scents just simply disappeared." "This is not good," thought Tsunade. "Could Anko and Kabuto be working together then? But that doesn't make any sense. Why would they then try to stop us from knowing if Naruto really did kill Hayashi just because he felt like it? Could Ibiki be right? Could Naruto and Kabuto just be faking to be enemies, but really be on the same side? Ugh, so many damn questions and not a single fucking answer. This is troublesome," muttered Shikaku with a sigh. His thoughts were exactly the same as that of Tsunade's. Well, with not so much cursing involved. "Anko," thought Shizun, troubled. "What do we do now?" asked Ibiki. Tsunade gripped the pieces of papers that she still held in her hand before turning away and starting to walk away again, throwing all of the papers everywhere behind her. "We need to get ready for war," simply answered Tsunade. The others could only watch Tsunade retreating back. Fu rested her head comfortably on Naruto's shoulder as they both stood sitting down in one of the beaches in the destroyed island of Yuzu, watching the sun begin to rise to its highest location during the day. Naruto had his right arm wrapped around his fellow Jinchuriki, holding her close to him. "Can I ask you something?" said Fu in a soft tone. "What is it?" asked Naruto calmly. Do you feel any different now that you know what you are and what you're supposed to do? Asked Fu. Naruto was silent for a few moments, thinking of the question that Fu had just asked him. No, he finally answered her, I don't. I'm still me. I'm still the same person that you knew before we were told of what happened. Well, not as ignorant as before but otherwise, still the same. Is that bad? Fu shook her head slightly. Of course not. Well, not to me. I like this Naruto, and I'm glad that he didn't change just because he's the creator of the ninja world. Naruto chuckled. I'm not that type of person. A stuck-up bastard. I may be a bastard and an asshole to some people and possibly many other things, but not a stuck-up one. Besides, I'm not entirely sure if being the creator of the current ninja world is something to be proud of. It's humanity, stated Fu. If there is one thing that I got out of all of those shocking truths is that humans are stupid. We always want more and are never content. I wonder though, why are we like that? Naruto could only shrug. I don't have the answer to that, Fu. Because even I'm guilty of that. Fu nodded as she brought her face closer to Naruto's neck. Yes, you are. But you don't try to hide it, which is what I like about you. Are you comfortable with all of this? Asked Naruto as he looked at the rolling waves of the ocean in front of him. I'm here, aren't I? Said Fu with a smile. That should tell you all that you need to know. Naruto smirked but didn't respond. The two just simply sat there in silence. We'll need to get moving soon, said Naruto after a while. Our job isn't over yet. Fu sighed at hearing that. I just want to stay like this forever. Maybe after we're finished with our mission, replied Naruto. Something tells me that it's not going to be that easy, commented Fu as both she and Naruto stood up. Naruto still had his arm wrapped around the green-haired Jinchuriki. Things never are, agreed Naruto. Just what is that you want to confirm? Asked Fu, having listened to what Naruto had told Mikoto. Don't worry about that, said Naruto while shaking his head. An image of the scroll that he had gained from the spy that he had implanted in Danzo's root appeared in Naruto's mind but dismissed it. Fu merely sighed but nodded, accepting it. You know the answer already, commented Kurama within Naruto's mind. Besides, even if it isn't true, it still won't change the fact that you will destroy Konoha. I know that, replied Naruto. But still, I'm curious. Kurama stayed quiet. He knew it would be pointless to argue. Besides, it wasn't as if he didn't like what was going to happen either. Let's go then, said Naruto as he activated his eternal Manjikyu. Fu simply nodded. The two Jinchuriki disappeared in a dark flash, making it seem as if no one was ever there in the first place besides the footprints that were imprinted into the light brown sand of the beach. All remained silent after that in the once proud land of the Uzumaki clan. It's a good thing that Konoha doesn't know of all of Orochimaru-sama's old bases, thought Kabuto with a chuckle as he was currently standing in a sitting position within a dark room, an unconscious Anko laying right behind him. In front of him currently stood a large chess-like piece of paper, multiple squares present all over. Kabuto then brought several of white beads from within his maroon cloak and just simply held them with his right hand. Dark Naruto has already almost finished adapting to his curse seal, thought Kabuto. Or should I say, Shin? Kabuto chuckled at that thought. Dark Naruto had apparently chosen a new name for himself as if to cut all ties with his other self. And the name that he had chosen was Shin for real, or true. He will be ready for once things start, thought Kabuto. And it won't be long now. He then glanced back at Anko, or more specifically, her curse seal. Orochimaru-sama's chakra will be useful in the long run. But for now. Kabuto brought both of his hands together into the ram seal, closing his eyes and concentrating. He still had to bring the remaining of his needed pawns together. But he was confident that he would be ready once the war started. It wouldn't be long now. Where the end would arrive. Mikoto stood on top of the Reikage Tower, watching every single member of Kumo's army begin to march out of the village and towards Konoha. Obito stood next to her, also looking down at the moving army. Both White Zetsu and Black Zetsu were behind the two, having rejoined each other. "You know, I didn't really think that things would go like this," commented Obito with humor in his voice. After Mikoto had told White Zetsu to tell him to get back, Obito had teleported both himself and Mikoto to Kumo to oversee all of this. Sasuke with his team as well as both Yujito and B had proceeded to Konoha from where they had been. "It doesn't matter now, does it?" said Mikoto with a grin. "At long last, Konoha will burn to the ground." Obito glanced at the eager-looking female Uchiha. "You're enjoying this far too much, you know." Mikoto shrugged. "I don't care. Now, let's go. We don't want to be late, now do we?" Obito chuckled as Mikoto began to walk away. "Is this all right?" asked Black Zetsu once Mikoto had disappeared completely from the rooftop. Obito shrugged. "I don't know. Madara never did tell me how things would end." "Maybe because he himself didn't know the answer to that," guessed White Zetsu with a chuckle. "Perhaps," muttered Obito before he himself started to walk away. "In any case, it doesn't matter how Madara wanted for things to end at this point. This is how it will go. But is it the right way?" Obito shrugged one last time. "Who knows? We won't know until we walk through it. In any event, it's not my choice. I'm just simply going through the flow, as it were." Black Zetsu remained silent while White Zetsu laughed. "This will be fun," exclaimed White Zetsu. Obito didn't respond. Dark Naruto or Shin sat in a simple bed in silence, resting and waiting for his body to completely become accustomed to the curse seal that Kabuto had given him. The room around him was all dark, but he didn't mind. He actually felt at peace here. But that didn't mean that he was going to stay put any longer than what he needed to. He still needed to kill Naruto. Then, he would truly be at peace. Shin grinned darkly at that thought. He couldn't wait to have both of his hands surrounded in Naruto's blood with said person's body just laying there, dead. That was his greatest objective at the moment. Damn Kabuto and whatever it was that he wanted to accomplish. It didn't concern Shin the slightest. Kabuto's dream was just simply a delusion in Shin's eyes. He could never become the Rikudo Sennin. And that was because Shin was the Rikudo Sennin as well as Naruto. But that would change soon. He would make sure of it. Naruto looked at the rebuilt village with an emotionless look from on top of the head of the Shodai Hokage on the Hokage mountain, Fu standing right beside him. "It won't take them long to find you if you just stand here," commented Kurama. "And I'm sure that you want to wait for the forces from Kumo to get here first. That will make your objective a lot easier, won't it?" Naruto didn't respond. He simply walked away from the edge of the Shodai's head on the mountain, intent on deciding to stay in the tunnels for the moment. He didn't get far, however, as a group of 5 Umbu surrounded both him and Fu. Yugao stepped forward, pointing her sword at Naruto. "Did you really think that we would not notice you again? Especially with how things are at the moment." Naruto didn't even bother to respond to her. "Was this your plan all along?" asked Kurama. "Yes," answered Naruto. "This will throw the whole village into disarray, trying to find me and where I am as well, trying to stop me. That's what Tsunade cares about the most after all." But Fu activated her green armor the next moment, taking a step forward as well. "Oh," thought Naruto as he looked at Fu in surprise. "Chome, you," thought Kurama, surprised as well. "You will not stop us," said Fu, narrowing her eyes at the masked purple-haired female Umbu. "We will see about that," replied Yugao. "I need to make this quick," thought Naruto. "But you, Tsunade, have underestimated me, sending just simply 5 Umbu against me. You still haven't learned. And it will cost you." Both Naruto and Fu prepared themselves while Yugao and the 4 other Umbu readied themselves as well. Let's get this party started, thought Naruto as he activated his Rinnegan with a smirk on his face. Seeing this made Yugao and the rest of the Umbu present to take a step back, but it wouldn't do them much. Naruto brought both of his hands forward. Shinra Tensei. Neji calmly walked through one of the halls in the newly rebuilt Hyuga mansion. It was early in the morning, but Neji didn't know exactly what time it was. If he were to guess, he would say somewhere around 8 in the morning. While Neji was an early morning starter, he didn't know why exactly he was up this early today. Other times in the past it had just been because he had wanted to train or because he had something to attend to. Mostly to do with things that Hayashi assigned to him in the past. But with said clan head now gone, Neji now had a lot of free time. Of course he knew this wouldn't last for long. Neji wasn't sure yet as to when exactly Naruto would begin with the final stage with his plan, but he guessed that there was still some time before it actually happened. Neji was greeted by 2 branch members of the Hyuga clan that were quietly walking the opposite way that he was going. Both members bowed slightly as Neji walked past them. This didn't surprise Neji in the slightest. Against his wishes, Neji was viewed as a sort of leader for the branch members of the Hyuga clan, even by the elders of the branch clan at that. Of course, there was also the fact that he was well liked by the main house as well. Some members of the main house, though, weren't particularly thrilled by that fact, but Neji just simply didn't give a flying rat ass what they thought. Neji stopped for a second, as if assessing something before he started to walk forward again. A few seconds later, though, he suddenly turned right towards one of the doors that lead to one of the many libraries that the compound contained. Opening the door and walking into the room, Neji was pleasantly surprised to see that no one was currently inside the library. Letting the door open for another second, Neji closed it behind him. He then proceeded to walk to one of the windows on the opposite side of the door, just staring out towards the village. You know, began Neji with a small sigh, I'm quite surprised to see you here right now, Naruto. A few seconds later, one Uzumaki Naruto appeared in the middle room, a calm look on his face. Why should you be? Asked Naruto. Neji shrugged, not turning around to face his supposed leader. Because it just means that something big is going to happen. Naruto was quiet at that for a few moments. Then he said, You're right about that. It's time to finish with what we all want. Neji turned away from the window and its view to look at Naruto. But why so early? Asked Neji with a raised eyebrow. I thought that it wouldn't occur until dash. The plan has changed, interrupted Naruto with a shake of his head. There's something that I want, no, that I must have as soon as possible. And what is that? Asked Neji with a curious look on his face. Naruto sighed. Don't worry about that right now. But I'm going to need your assistance in this. What is it? Questioned Neji. The forces from Kyumo won't be here for a few more hours, explained Naruto calmly, but I'm going to need some backup at the moment. And I can't wait for Kyumo to do this. You're being too impatient, Naruto, warned Neji. If you do this, it can jeopardize everything. I know that, replied Naruto with a sigh. But I can't wait any longer for this. I have to do it now. Realization hit Neji straight in the face. You're just a clone, aren't you? He said with narrowed eyes. Naruto chuckled slightly at the observation. Correct. The real me is currently on the Hokage mountain. It won't be long for someone to spot me either. Then why are you dash? Naruto held one of his hands up to stop Neji. Like you've already said, I'm impatient right now. This might not be the best way, but I need Konoha to know that I'm here. But I also can't let them get in my way from retrieving what is mine. Then what do you need of me? Asked Neji. The Hyuga clan, answered Naruto. I understand that Hinata became the new clan head already, congratulations on that, by the way. I didn't think that it was possible. Neji shrugged. It wasn't that hard to achieve. In any case, This will come in handy right now, continued Naruto. I need for the Hyuga clan to be the diversion for now. Neji stared blankly at the Naruto clone for a few moments before responding, so what you're saying is that you want for a single clan to go against the whole village? That's just suicide. It can't be helped, replied Naruto with another sigh. Not with these circumstances. Which is why you should have just waited, retorted Neji with a shake of his head. Naruto shrugged. Maybe, but it's out of the question now. But don't worry, you won't be all alone out there. I brought some backup. Who? Asked Neji with a raised eyebrow. Fu, simply answered Naruto. The Nanabai, muttered Neji, finally understanding what Naruto was saying. Naruto nodded. Exactly. With you and the Hyuga clan as well as the Nanabai, it should be enough to stall Konoha until Kyumo arrives. But how are we to get the rest of the clan into going along with this? Asked Neji. Naruto shrugged. Easy. Fear. I see. Muttered Neji. You have your orders, stated Naruto. I'm counting on you, Neji. Don't fail me. Neji's face became dark. Don't worry, I won't. I've also got a stake in this, if you haven't forgotten. This is as important to me as it is to you. Good, simply said Naruto before he dispersed into a puff of smoke, indicating that he was just simply a shadow clone. I need to get Hinata, thought Neji as he proceeded to walk out of the library. It seemed that he had been wrong after all. The end was here already. And he would make sure that the end would go his way. After all, it was the whole reason that he was even in this to begin with. Father, thought Neji as he walked out of the library, closing the door behind him. Back on top of the Hokage mountain, things were not looking good for one purple-haired Umbu. And why was that? Because the rest of her teammates were already dead. Now, she was facing off against one of the strongest shinobi in existence, if not the strongest. And he wasn't alone either. That jutsu, thought Yugao, remembering that Naruto had used it before to destroy the village once. It's extremely powerful. But it seems my theory was right. She was referring, of course, to the fact that she had sent chakra to both of her feet to stick to the ground to prevent her from being blown away. It had worked, if barely. Even with the chakra keeping her stuck to the ground, she had still almost been blown away with the rest of her teammates. Naruto for his part had to raise an eyebrow in surprise and respect as he noticed this particular fact thanks to his Rinnegan. So, she used chakra to keep herself from being pushed back, did she? Clever. I have to agree with that, commented Kurama. Pity, though, that she has to die. Yeah, agreed Naruto. But I don't have time to waste on her. I have to find it first. Kurama already knew what his host was talking about, but the bijou had to raise an eyebrow in confusion. And here I thought that you were going for the journal first. Not anymore, replied Naruto. The weapon comes first. I don't know if Kabuto knows of it yet since Danzo had been working with Orochimaru in search for it apparently. The scroll never did say if Danzo found it or not. But Naruto held his head with his left hand, hiding the smirk that befell his face. The Rikudo Sennin seems to still be offering me assistance. Give me memories of it. Kurama was silent at that. Fu, said Naruto, causing the green-haired Jinchuriki next to him to turn to look at him. I need you to deal with her. There's something that I need to do before everyone else arrives. Fu nodded. I see. Then leave it to me. Hearing this caused Yugao to narrow her eyes behind her mask. Everyone else, she thought. Who else is coming? And what are they planning? Link up with Neji and Hinata afterwards, continued Naruto, turning his back on Yugao and starting to walk back towards the face of the Shodai Hokage. Hinata, thought Fu, clearly surprised. Since when is she? But Yugao's thoughts were clearly different at the moment. Those two, Are they the traitors that injected the killer cells into Hayashi's corpse? But just how would they have been able to obtain them in the first place? Does this mean that they could have killed Hayashi then? To make Hinata the new clan head? But for what purpose? Ugh, this is just too damn confusing. Fu simply nodded again. Seeing this, Naruto disappeared, intent on retrieving what was for all purposes, his. Fu turned her attention back on the quiet Umbu. So it's just you and me now, said Fu with a small smirk. I'm going to enjoy this. TCH, thought Yugao as she readied her sword in front of her. I shouldn't have come to confront them so ill-prepared. I should have warned Tsunade-sama first. But now was not the time for that. She needed to kill or defeat the opponent before her and then to tell Tsunade of the intrusion as well as the information that she just acquired. He honestly didn't care that he said that out loud, thought Yugao, thinking of Naruto. He did it on purpose. He's confident that the girl before me can kill me. Yugao gripped the sword that she currently held. Well, I'm going to prove to him that he's terribly mistaken. Are you ready, Chomei? Asked Fu within her mind. Chomei merely nodded. Yes, I am. Now, let's do this. Fu simply nodded in return. Gripping her sword for the final time, Yugao charged at Fu with an incredible speed. That sword cannot penetrate my armor, stated Chomei within Fu's mind as said girl was forced to dodge the strikes from the purple-haired Umbu, if barely. But it would be best if you don't let her know that just yet. Let her think that she can, getting her hopes up before shattering them into million pieces. You're cruel, Chomei, thought Fu with a slight sweat drop as she continued to dodge Yugao's sword strikes. Chomei didn't respond. Not bad, thought Yugao as she jumped back to put some distance between her and the younger female in front of her. Now, to kick it up a notch. Fu raised an eyebrow as the Umbu in front of her went deadly still. What is she up to, wondered Fu. But then her eyes were wide open as she felt a cut on her left arm, some of her armor having been cracked as well. How, she said, turning around to look at Yugao who was now standing behind her who also had her sword in front of her. Fu also felt some blood trickling down her cheek from a cut on her left cheek as well. It seems that Yugao had also tried to cut her neck off, but the armor had held, if only barely. I was once trained by Uzumaki Kushina, stated Yugao, her sword glowing a slight hazy blue. I know for a fact that that armor of yours is not ordinary, those wings on your back being proof of that. But I'm not an ordinary kunoichi either. I'm the best shinobi with a sword in Konoha at the moment. That armor of yours, it is nothing before me. Fu looked at the Umbu in front of her in silence for a few moments before she started to laugh. Well, I'm not an ordinary kunoichi either, retorted Fu after she had finished laughing as the wings on her back started to flap. And I'm going to show you that that little sword of yours is nothing before me. Yugao growled behind her mask slightly as Fu ascended high into the air. What is she planning, she asked herself before she was forced to duck an incoming Fu. She's fast, thought Yugao as she jumped out of the way of the now flying Fu. It's those wings that give her speed, thought Yugao as she landed. If I take those out, she's nothing. Yugao then brought her sword forward in order to chop the incoming projectiles heading her way. What are these things, thought Yugao as she tried to cut off all of the green and scaly-looking projectiles. But there were just too many of them. Yugao could only frown as she noticed that some of them actually cut her on both of her shoulders. Seeing no other alternative, Yugao began to jump backwards in order to dodge the projectiles that were currently being thrown at her. Hangairi. What, thought Yugao as she was blown back into a tree in midair from the shockwave. Yugao could only hold her stomach in pain after having been flown into the tree. Is that all you got? Taunted Fu from the air. Really, and you were going on all about how you would crush me before. I'm not done yet, retorted Yugao as she stood up. Fu frowned before the green scaly projectiles from before started to appear on both sides of her arms. So those things are part of her armor that she simply throws at her opponent, realized Yugao before she fell on her knees again. She then proceeded to puke out blood from her mouth as well as feeling both of her shoulders burning as if she was being burned alive. Fu smirked as she noticed this. So it's finally kicking in, is it? She said. What did you do to me? Screamed Yugao in pain. Fu could only shrug. It's nothing special really. It's just that these little tools of mine are in fact coated with chakra of that of a bijou. And since you're not a Jinchuriki, meaning that your body is not used to the chakra of a bijou, well, I'm sure you know what happens as a result of coming into contact with the demonic chakra. Yugao could only scowl as she heard this. This is not a good situation for me, she thought. I need to retreat. Fu shook her head. And don't be thinking of running away because I'm not going to let you. Yugao could only scream in pain as her whole body was pierced by the sharp scales from Fu's armor that said Kunoichi had just thrown at her once again. Fu calmly landed in front of the panting female Umbu whose sword now simply laid on the ground. So this is it, said Fu as she picked up Yugao's sword. I must thank you, though, for showing me that there are ways for my armor to be penetrated. I'll be more careful from now on. Yugao raised her head to look up at Fu. Just what are you planning on doing? Fu shook her head. I'm not planning anything. It's Naruto. I'm merely following him. Why? It was the only thing that Yugao could ask. Fu raised Yugao's sword up, looking right into the mask where she presumed the Kunoichi's eyes would be. Surely you must have someone that you deeply cared for and loved with the entire fiber of your being, said Fu softly. I see. Muttered Yugao as an image of Hay-8 appeared in her mind. She then lowered her head to the ground. There was nothing else to say. Fu quickly took a swipe with the sword, beheading the purple-haired Umbu. While it wasn't a clean cut as she wasn't really a fan of swords, it did the job. Yuzuki Yugao was dead. Fu dropped the sword on the ground while deactivating Komiai's armor as well. She turned her head to look towards the village. Now I need to get to where Niji is, thought Fu as she began to walk towards the village. And that is? Asked Chomei. Fu could only shrug. The Hyuga compound. And I'm presuming that it's the largest building or buildings in the area. I'm sure someone will tell me. How? Easy, thought Fu as a puff of smoke appeared around her. The Henge Jutsu. I'm sure that no civilian will notice the difference. Chomei stayed silent, merely opting to allow his host to do as she pleased. In any case, it wouldn't be long before Konoha found the bodies. But another thought invaded the Bijou's mind. Just what was Naruto looking for? He supposed that he would know soon enough. Obito looked at all the weapons in front of him, trying to decide which one to bring with him. He was currently in the original underground base that Madara had built for himself and where Obito himself had stayed for some years. Obito's outfit had also changed. He now wore black pants with a black t-shirt, a black cape with white lines running down all through both sides of its long sleeves as well as through the raised-up collar and down both sides of the open front. He now also wore gloves that were similar to that of Kushina's as well as black shinobi sandals. The Uchiha clan symbol was present on the upper back of his coat. Looking around the selections of weapons all hanging in front of him again, Obito decided to go with the one that had been Madara's favorite, which was the gunbai. Obito didn't know why he was taking this one. But something in his gut just told him to do it. Besides, it wasn't like he wasn't familiar with the weapon either. Madara had let both him and Tobi practice with it as well as with all the other weapons that he had possessed. Obito looked behind him to see both black Zetsu and white Zetsu coming out of the ground behind him. What is it? Asked Obito as he strapped the gunbai on his back. The army is now ready, answered black Zetsu. So Tobi really had been using the Bijou's chakra to hasten the production of white Zetsus then, muttered Obito. But we finished it, added black Zetsu. Although we did use a considerable amount of the Shikaku's chakra for this. Obito waved one of his hands in dismissal at that. Who cares? I'm sure that Naruto won't mind either. Now come on. We need to get to Konoha as soon as possible, finished Obito as he started to walk towards the exit of the hideout. The army of me is already on the move, stated White Zetsu with a big grin. I can't wait to see what they do. We'll find out soon enough, said Obito in response as he started to disappear in a vortex. Seeing this, Zetsu began to disappear into the ground as well. Their destination was Konoha. Tsunade brought both of her hands down on her desk, a furious look on her face. What did you just say? She screamed. The Umbu in front of her held his ground bravely, however. He didn't achieve this rank for nothing. Tsunade-sama, please calm down, pleaded Shizune from Tsunade's right, holding Taunton close to her chest. Yugao, you idiot, thought Tsunade in anger. Just what had you been planning on doing? This is obvious that Naruto is most likely back, commented Shikaku from his spot, leaning against one of the walls in Tsunade's office. Tsunade clenched her hands at that thought before looking at the Umbu in front of her again. Declare the village into lockdown, now. No one leaves or enters, is that understood? Hi, Hokage-sama, simply replied the Umbu, bowing for a moment before disappearing, intent on carrying his orders. Shizune. Said woman stood sharply as Tsunade turned to look at her. Prepare our defensive strategies, now. Also call a meeting of all clan heads and jonin in the village. This time we will not be so ill-prepared. Hi. With that, Shizune literally ran out of the office, also intent on carrying her orders. Shikaku, began Tsunade as she began to walk towards the door of her office, catching Nara's attention, let's go. We have plans to put into effect. Shikaku could only nod as he followed behind the raging blonde Senju. You won't get away this time, Naruto, thought Tsunade furiously. Little did she know that running away was the last of Naruto's intentions. At the underground levels of the village of Konoha in one of the many bases that Orochimaru had once used, a slightly panting Kabuto currently stood. Well, actually he was sitting down at the moment, but that wasn't the point. Kabuto could only grin at the sight of a multitude of coffins standing behind him. He had done it. His preparations were now complete. Now all that was needed was for Shin to arrive. But Kabuto knew that it wouldn't take long for that to happen. Shin possessed a teleportation that clearly rivaled that of Obito's. Now, all I have is to wait, he thought before the snake behind him started to hiss in his ears. Kabuto raised an eyebrow as the snake delivered the information from one of the many other smaller snakes that Kabuto had placed all over the underground levels of Konoha. So Naruto-kun is already here, thought Kabuto with a frown. This is unexpected, but what is he doing in the Uchiha secret meeting room? The only thing of importance there is the tablet left behind by Rikudo Sennin for his descendants to know what had once happened with the Jubi. But it didn't matter for Kabuto. He would use this opportunity to his advantage. He may have already failed once in the Land of Iron, but he was willing to try again. After all, he had an entire army of obedient shinobi at his disposal. Maybe he could even wound Naruto before Shin arrived to finish the job. Yes, thought Kabuto with a smirk, but who to send? It took him a few moments to figure it out. But soon, he was content with his choices. These four will do nicely. Naruto calmly stopped in front of the tablet in the almost dark underground secret room of the Uchiha clan. The room was only lit by two torches that stood on both sides where the tablet was placed. So this is it, thought Naruto, an eager look on his face as he activated his Rinnegan. I'm surprised that Tobi never found this though, commented Kurama as Naruto concentrated on the tablet in front of him. After all, he did have that Nagato person with him who also possessed the Rinnegan. Have you forgotten what I have remembered? Asked Naruto as he brought his hands up to the ram seal. The reason that Nagato could have never found this is because it requires the usage of Bija Chakra. So the old man was planning for this, thought Kurama with a chuckle before going silent. Now, to unlock the final tool that he created. Naruto closed his eyes momentarily before snapping them wide open as Kurama's chakra began to surround him. Now, open, screamed Naruto in his mind as he forced Kurama's chakra into the tablet. The tablet easily received the chakra, almost as if its whole purpose was just to do that. And it was. It glowed for just 1 second before it started to crack into pieces. Naruto couldn't contain the laugh that escaped him as the tablet exploded into millions of tiny pieces, all spreading around the room. But Naruto didn't care about that at the moment. All he cared about was what now remained. It was a sword. But it wasn't just any type of sword either. It was one that was made by the Rikudo Sennin along with all of his other special weapons that were currently in the possession of other villages, mainly Kyumo. The sword itself was black in color with red streaks running all through the sides and down the middle as well as its handle. Its blade was made entirely of pure silver. The sword was extremely wide as well. It looked as if only someone with immense upper body strength could pick it up. But to Naruto, who immediately picked it up, it was nothing. It felt as if he had been wielding it his entire life, which wasn't far from the truth either. How did I ever live without you? Thought Naruto with glee. Because you didn't even know that it existed until just about yesterday, stated Kurama with a chuckle. It doesn't matter now, replied Naruto as he placed the massive sword on his shoulder, Kisame style. It's back with me where it belongs. He wasn't able to enjoy it for much longer, however, as 4 coffins rose out of the ground in front of him. Kabuto, thought Naruto with narrowed eyes. Seems like he's too late though, stated Kurama as the openings for all 4 of the coffins fell to the ground, leaving its content wide open for Naruto to see. Naruto raised both of his eyebrows as he immediately recognized the 4 shinobi present. So it's you 4 this time, began Naruto with a chuckle. Jiraiya, Itachi, Madara, and Tobi, said 4 shinobi all opened their eyes as the coffins that they were in disappeared into the ground. What is this? Said Jiraiya as he looked around the room, clearly confused. This is, muttered Itachi, having already recognized the room. Madara immediately spotted Naruto and had to sigh as he immediately understood what was going on. Again with this, Kabuto should know that it's pointless. And here I actually thought that he was smarter than that. Tobi for his part was also in the same state as Jiraiya. Confused as hell. Welcome back to the land of the living, said Naruto with a feral grin. Who are you? Asked Itachi with a raised eyebrow. Uzumaki Naruto, answered Madara before Naruto could. Jiraiya's eyes widened at this information. Naruto, he repeated in shock. But how could you be Naruto? You look nothing like him. Naruto merely pointed with his free hand to his cheeks where his whiskers were. As soon as Jiraiya saw this, he gasped again. It was Naruto. Figures. You die and things start changing like there is no tomorrow. Fucking time. So this is what you have become, thought Itachi as he gazed at the now identified Naruto. Tobi growled as he looked at Naruto. You little brat, it seems as if I was given the chance to pay you back for ruining my plans. Naruto chuckled at hearing that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it his plan in the first place, said Naruto, pointing at the stoic-looking Madara. Hearing this caused Tobi to pause for a moment. How do you know that? He asked. Naruto simply shrugged. I don't really feel like telling you that. Tobi growled again. I can see now why you always hid your face, said Naruto with another chuckle, referring to the lack of the mask that Tobi had always worn. Instead, now he simply wore a dark red cloak just like Itachi was currently wearing. Jiraiya was wearing his usual attire just like Madara was as well. Before anything else could take place, a vortex appeared right beside Naruto. Well, isn't this a reunion? Am I invited? Tobi's face gained that of insanity as he immediately recognized the voice. Obito. Uchiha Obito appeared out of the vortex, a mixture of a grin and a smirk on his face. "So you're also here," said Naruto, sparring Obito at a glance. "Do you honestly believe that I would miss this?" replied Obito with a shake of his head. "Obito," screamed Tobi again. "Nice seeing you again, Tobi," simply said Obito, but focused entirely on Madara. "Just how long do you plan on staying there, being used as a simple mindless puppet?" Madara chuckled at hearing that. "It's for convenience purposes, but now it's pointless, isn't it?" Obito retrieved the gunbai that was strapped on his back before throwing it to Madara, who caught it with little effort. "So this is the true Madara," thought Itachi, watching all of this with a calculating gaze. Jiraiya just didn't have a single clue as to what was going on at the moment. Just how long had he been dead for? "So you're on our side this time, are you?" said Naruto to Madara, who simply disappeared only to reappear on Naruto's right side, the opposite of where Obito stood. "Kabuto made the mistake of summoning me again," stated Madara. "And now it will cost him." "First comes these three though," said Obito, looking straight at Tobi. "I always wanted for this to happen," said Tobi, looking back at Obito with hatred and completely forgetting about Naruto at the moment. "I don't care if I'm just some simple tool right now. I will finally kill you, Obito. And show Madara who is the better between you and me." Madara for his part simply brought his gunbai forward, not really caring much about Tobi at this point. "It seems that I don't have a choice either," commented Itachi as his Sharingan activated. Jiraiya remained silent, simply looking straight at Naruto. He had died easily, having underestimated both Kushina and Mikoto, but he wouldn't commit the same mistake with Naruto here. Naruto laughed as his grip on his sword tightened, an excited look on his face as well as in his Rinnegan eyes. "Let's get the party started. Let's get the party started." It wasn't a second after Naruto's loud announcement that said silver-haired Jinchuriki disappeared from his spot between both Madara and Obito, only to reappear in front of a wide-eyed Jiraiya. "Fast," thought Jiraiya before he was pushed back with great force thanks to Naruto. "Shinra Tensei, Ak!" Jiraiya screamed in pain as he was flown backwards due to the gravity attack. But he wasn't the only one. The force of the attack had been strong enough to affect both Itachi and Tobi as well, who weren't the intended target either. "I recalled that he gained possession of the Rinnegan somehow," thought Tobi as he came to a halt right before he was mashed into the wall behind him. Itachi was on the opposite side of the room in front of the other wall, managing to counter his Susanoo at the last moment. Naruto stood on the spot where he, Jiraiya, had been with said shinobi, having been pushed all the way into the far wall, creating a big hole which indicated the spot where he had gone through. Naruto still had his newly acquired sword on his shoulder. All the other occupants could feel the bloodlust that was currently radiating from the only Uzumaki that was present in the room. "It seems that he's finally letting out all of that pent-up anger and bloodlust," thought Madara, looking straight at Naruto's back. "He's not messing around anymore." Obito merely smirked at the sight. "This is it, I suppose." He then glanced at Tobi, who was still staring at Naruto in anger. "Brat!" screamed Tobi as he rushed at said brat blindly without thinking about anything else but to kill his target. He was basically being consumed in his own anger by this point. Naruto didn't even glance at his direction, not even when Tobi was right in front of him, his Mangekyo flaring in anger. His other Sharingan eye was still in its basic form since its Mangekyo form had not been unlocked by the original owner. Tobi could only look in anger as his punch was blocked by one from Obito, who now stood in front of him. Obito still had a smirk on his face as he and Tobi came face to face. "Weren't you saying something about you wanting to prove that you're better than me? Well, this is your chance." Tobi narrowed his eyes at Obito before they both disappeared in a vortex the next moment, heading to who knew where. "That takes care of Tobi," muttered Kurama. Naruto didn't respond. I suppose that leaves you to me, said Madara, gazing at the stoic-looking Itachi who was surrounded by his own Susanoo ribcage. Uchiha Madara, simply responded Itachi as he tore his eyes from Naruto's form to look at Madara. It would appear that I had been mistaken all along, thinking that Tobi was you. That doesn't matter now, replied Madara as he brought his gun by forward, pointing it straight at Itachi. I had always wanted to fight against you, Uchiha Itachi. It's a pity that you're already dead, but it can't be helped now. I'll simply help you to get back to hell where I will soon join you afterwards. Itachi chuckled lightly. Yeah, I suppose that is true. I wasn't expecting to be brought back into this little tale that I really want no part in either. But like you have said, it can't be helped now. Now, come, Uchiha Madara. Both Uchihas locked eyes with each other's respective Mangekyo, or in Madara's case, his eternal Manjikyu. But Naruto didn't pay them any attention either. He was simply focusing on Jiraiya, who was on his way in trying to disentangle himself from the debris from the hole on the wall that he had unknowingly created. Get up, old man, said Naruto with no emotion currently present in his voice. I want to enjoy destroying every part of your body. Jiraiya could only frown as he heard this. Just what had happened to Naruto? He never expected for things to go the way that they had. This was just all simply too wrong. If only he hadn't left Naruto alone that day those 3 years ago, if only he had actually been there to personally help Naruto, maybe all of this could have been avoided. But I can't change the past, thought Jiraiya as he finally freed himself and made his way out of the hole. He stopped a few feet away from Naruto, staring right into Naruto's unchanging Rinnegan eyes. What I can do is change the future, however. And that is what I will aim to do here today. Naruto gripped the handle on his sword for just a moment before charging at the person who had once been his teacher and friend. Jiraiya leaned forward slightly as he prepared to defend himself from the person who had once been his student. Make this fun for me, Jiraiya, screamed Naruto as he brought his sword upwards, intent on cutting down the white-haired Sannin. At the last moment, Naruto's sword clashed with a simple kunai that Jiraiya had taken out. Jiraiya gritted his teeth in slight frustration as he felt himself being pushed back by Naruto with simple brute strength alone, but not only that, but he also felt Naruto's sword starting to cut right through the kunai. Just what is that sword? Wondered Jiraiya. The next moment was one of the most shocking that Jiraiya had ever experienced in his whole life. And what was that? That was Jiraiya looking straight at a dark form that seemed to be enveloping Naruto. All Jiraiya could see were dark red eyes with a circular pattern around them, looking as if they were staring right into his very soul and enjoying it very much too. What is that thing? Thought Jiraiya, actually beginning to feel fear creeping into his very heart, if he even possessed that in this reanimation form. He wasn't able to dwell on this too long, however, as he was suddenly hunched forward from having been kicked right into the stomach by none other than Naruto. Don't space out on me, said Naruto with the same tone as before. I told you to make this interesting for me. If you don't, it just won't be fun killing you again. Jiraiya then felt his right arm that also held the kunai being chopped off by Naruto's sword, which had finally cut completely through the kunai. Jiraiya fell to his knees, using his other hand to hold his right shoulder, and looked up to see Naruto standing over him. Is this all you can do? Asked Naruto as he raised his sword up again. Jiraiya gritted his teeth again before forming a familiar jutsu with his left hand. Rasengan. But much to his dismay, the attack was simply repelled by Naruto's sword, with said individual having brought it forward in order to block the attack. Jiraiya's eyes widened as he felt himself be blown back a second time into the same wall and through the same hole as before. I'm just an insect to him, realized Jiraiya before he impacted through the wall again. Naruto simply stood there. Itachi jumped up to the ceiling of the underground room in order to dodge the gusts of winds that Madara had just sent him with his gun by. I have limited space here, thought Itachi, referring to the room that they were currently in. This is not a preferred location for a fight such as this. After all, I'm pretty sure that my genjutsu would be useless against him. Madara placed his gunbai on his back before bringing his hands together and starting to form a set of hand seals that were all too familiar to Itachi, who also began to do the same thing in response. Fire style, Gokaku. Both fireballs impacted with each other, trying to overpower the other in order to burn the user of the other into ash. My illness is no longer affecting me, realized Itachi as he continued trying to repel Madara's attack. It seems that I'm back to 100% then. In a quick motion, Madara had his gunbai back in his hands before using it to create more gusts of winds to empower his fire-style attack. Itachi could only frown as he noticed this particular fact, as well as seeing and feeling his own attack begin to be pushed back by the empowered fireball. The end result was a big explosion occurring, completely destroying that portion of the room. Naruto for his part looked up to the ceiling to see it beginning to crumble, as well as with the rest of the room. Those two, thought Naruto, thinking of Madara and Itachi as his own Susanoo appeared and began to shield from all of the incoming debris. This is just the beginning. Both Obito and Tobi landed roughly on the ground inside their own dimension, roughly a few feet apart from each other. But they weren't alone here. A good distance away from the two Uchiha was one Hatake Kakashi, who was also currently tied up with the chains from before that Obito had used to defeat both him and Tsunade. His left eye, which had one housed in the other eye from Obito, was covered with dried blood, as well as parts of his mask that covered the lower part of his face. "What is this?" asked Kakashi to himself, seeing what appeared to be two Obitos in front of him. But how was that possible? Both Obito and Tobi stood up at the same time, with Tobi looking at Obito with unmistakable hatred and dislike. "I didn't know that you still used this," said Tobi while spitting on the ground in front of him. "I was forced to as time went on," replied Obito calmly. "After all, whether I like it or not, this is a part of my power. It is a part of me, and I need to use it, or otherwise I would have probably died a long time ago." But to Tobi, none of that matters. Instead, he said, "If I would have known that you had gotten free of your fear, then I would have been able to kill you a long time ago." Obito could only sigh. "You still haven't changed, have you? Even after all these years?" "Were you expecting something different?" retorted Tobi before pausing and turning to look to his right to where Kakashi currently was. Tobi narrowed his eyes on this. "You." Obito turned to his left to see who exactly Tobi was looking at the moment. "Well, Kakashi. I almost forgot that you were still here." Kakashi currently had his single eye wide in shock. "You too, who the hell are you?" he screamed in anger. Obito chuckled lightly as well as shook his head. "This must be a shocker to you, I suppose. But I guess that I can't blame you. If another one of you showed up, would probably be in the same state as well." But then he shrugged. "It's nothing, really. We're both Obito." "I'm not you," interrupted Tobi with a scowl on his face. "I'm me, that's all there is to it. I'm simply Tobi now, not Uchiha Obito." Obito merely stared at Tobi in silence. "How is this possible?" muttered Kakashi. Tobi turned to look at him again. "You don't have to worry about that, Kakashi. Just know that that person over there is Obito," he said while pointing at said person, "while I'm not," he finished while pointing at himself. "You can keep telling yourself that," retorted Obito with narrowed eyes, "but you know that it isn't true. You're also a part of me." Tobi growled again as his Mangekyo spun. "Shut up," he screamed as he brought his hands together. Seeing this, Obito readied himself. "While I'm in here, I'm not able to just simply let attacks phase right through me. Well, not unless I want to teleport back to the real world. But that also goes for him as well. I need to be careful." Fire style, Bakufu Ranbu. Recognizing the attack, Obito was quickly on the defensive as the spinning vortex of fire made its way towards him. Large spikes of wood began to appear in front of Obito, shielding him from the attack. Seeing this brought a frown upon Tobi's face. "Obito, you too." That's right, said Obito with a humorless chuckle from behind the large spikes of wood. I was also injected with Hashirama's cells just like you were. Obito appeared in front of the wooden spikes, his Mangekyo glowing. How else do you think that I've been able to possess the Mangekyo for so long without going blind? Tobi's hands turned into fists at this particular fact. It seems that you and I aren't too different after all, said Obito with a grin. Tobi didn't respond to that. Kakashi for his part could only watch all of this in complete confusion and frustration. Wooden spikes began to form on Tobi's deformed part of his body. Said individual was currently just simply looking straight at Obito with no emotions in his eyes, the complete opposite from before. It seemed that he was beginning to control his anger that he possessed for Obito. There's one thing that I always wanted to ask you, began Obito, causing Tobi to pause for a moment. And what is that? Asked Tobi. Obito paused for a moment before replying. Just what exactly were your intentions for having caused the civil war in Kiri? Just what did you have to gain from it? Tobi was quiet for a moment before he exploded in full laughter. So you still don't know, do you? Said Tobi when his laughter had died off. Well, I was the one who became the Mizukage after Madara died after all. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. Just answer me, interrupted Obito. Tobi shrugged. Payback. For what happened with Rin? You, said Obito with narrowed eyes. Tobi looked over at Kakashi. Aren't I right, Kakashi? That was the whole reason why you killed her that day. It was Rin's choice, muttered Kakashi, but was heard by both Obito and Tobi. She just wanted to protect Konoha. Tobi scoffed at the name. Again with that village. But yes, that is my reason, Obito. Kiri sealed the Sanbai into Rin, planning on unsealing it once she was in Konoha. But she chose death over that. When I found this information, it was then that I planned on manipulating the newly elected Yondaime Mizukage, who also happened to be the new Jinchuriki for the Sanbai after I stepped down from being the Mizukage. I placed a genjutsu upon him with my Mangekyo, trapping not only him but the Bijou as well. He was simply my puppet as well as the scapegoat for people to blame. And he served his purpose well. Obito could only at Tobi with what appeared to be a small amount of pity. To think that this could have been me. I don't need your pity either, stated Tobi as he brought his right arm backwards. Now die, Obito. Obito brought his hands together and started to inhale as Tobi shot the wooden spikes that had formed on his right arm at Obito. Fire style, Gokakyu. Tobi scowled as the wooden spikes were completely burned by the fireball. He narrowed his eyes as Obito inhaled again. Fire style, Hozenka. Tobi watched as the barrage of smaller fireballs were exhaled out from Obito's mouth. Reaching into his cloak, Tobi was pleasantly surprised to find sets of shurikens and kunais. He then jumped upwards as the fireballs reached his location before throwing the shurikens at Obito as well as inhaling just like Obito had done. Fire style, Hosenka Tsumabini. Clever bastard, thought Obito as the barrage of fire-covered shurikens made its way towards him. Obito then brought his hands down on the ground. Earth style, Doriyahiki. The earth wall appeared in front of Obito, completely blocking off Tobi's attack. I need to get in this, thought Kakashi as he struggled to free himself from the chains but found that he couldn't. They were wrapped around him tightly, making him unable to use his arms or hands. Not only that, but they also blocked his access to chakra. He was pretty much useless at the moment. This is my chance, thought Tobi as he rushed at the earth wall, pushing chakra to his feet to jump over it. I'm going to have to use Izanagi. Obito looked up to see Tobi jumping up from on top of the earth wall. I still have something that you don't, thought Obito as his Susanoo began to appear around him. So you even have this, thought Tobi in frustration while in midair. But let's see how you can react to this. Obito narrowed his eyes before they widened as Rin appeared beside him. Please stop, Obito. Pleaded Rin while tears began to form in her eyes. Obito chuckled humorlessly. So you would even go this far? The vrind beside him disappeared. Obito looked up to see the energy sword from his Susanoo piercing Toby in midair. I'm not stupid enough to fall for a trick like that, stated Obito with narrowed eyes. If you plan to defeat me, you'll have to do better than that. Toby's face was transformed to that of a shocked one before a dark smirk appeared on his face. I'm not so stupid either, Obito. Toby in midair disappeared, making Obito's eyes widen. Izanagi, realized Obito in his mind. Obito then turned around to see Toby behind him, rapidly forming hand seals. Oh no you don't, thought Obito as his Susanoo brought its sword towards Toby, who smirked before disappearing. No, screamed Obito in his mind, having realized what Toby had done but was too late. The next thing he knew, he felt something sticking out from his chest. Looking down, Obito wasn't surprised to see that it was a kunai sticking out from his chest. Toby laughed wildly from behind him. You're done, Obito. Obito chuckled despite the fact that blood was coming out from his mouth. So you teleported yourself from the dimension to the real world only for you to reappear inside my Susanoo, did you? Toby, whose other Sharingan had already been deactivated since he had sacrificed it to use Izanagi, didn't respond. Obito then smirked. But it seems that you have also underestimated me. Toby could only look on in anger as the Obito in front of him disappeared, only for another Obito to reappear a distance away in front of him with one of his eyes closed as well. So you also used Izanagi, said Toby in anger, having already guessed what Obito had done. Obito brought his right hand up towards his face to touch his now useless left eye, chuckling. So this is what you must have felt like, huh? Toby growled. Don't compare yourself to me. Obito shrugged as he lowered his hand away from his face. You're right, I really shouldn't. No matter what I do, you're still the crappy version of me. I've had enough, said Toby. Let's end this little charade already, Obito. Obito smirked at his other self. Now there is something that we can both agree on, Toby. Toby didn't offer a response. Instead, he simply brought out another kunai from within his dark red cloak. Obito for his part brought out his chains, one of his preferred weapons in combat. Both Obito and Toby were silent as they looked at each other, both with their single right Mangekyo Sharingan eye. The next moment, the two were in front of each other, one with the chains that were strapped to both of his wrists while the other with a single kunai in his right hand. Time seemed to slow down as the two prepared to attack the other. Toby brought his hand that held the kunai forward, intent on cutting Obito down. Obito for his part brought his chains forward, intent on trapping Toby within them. On the sidelines and currently watching this at the moment, Kakashi could see that the one called Toby was slightly faster than Obito. Is he going to? Toby had also noticed this fact as his face twisted into an insane look as his kunai almost reached Obito. This is it for you, Obito, he screamed in his mind. And to the utmost pleasure of Toby and the shock of Kakashi, he reached with his attack first, causing a major and fatal cut to Obito's upper chest near said individual's heart. Toby could only laugh like the madman that he was until he noticed that Obito's chains were wrapped tightly around him, with said shinobi now being behind him instead of being in front of him like he had been just a second before. How did you? Obito smirked despite the fact that he felt extreme pain at the moment as he could feel Toby boring a hole in his back. You celebrated too early, my old pal. I can still move. It was at that moment that Toby realized that he had been tricked. Obito had let him cut him so that he would not try to escape, and in his thinking that he had won, he had not noticed Obito continuing with his attack. Toby could only growl as he tried to teleport himself out of the dimension world only to see that he couldn't. Not only that, but he also felt his Mangekyo deactivated. Obito chuckled as he freed his wrists from the chains. These chains of mine block your chakra. You're now as powerless as a civilian, Toby. But I also made these especially for you. Toby could scream in anger as the chains around him began to glow. "You bastard!" Obito chuckled even though more blood started to flow out his mouth. "It seems that you and I were really truly different in the end. Different sides of the same coin, I suppose. But this is the end for the both of us, Toby." Toby gritted his teeth as the chains began to glow even brighter. "Go to hell," he simply said, accepting his fate. Obito turned his head to look at his other self. "Yeah, I will. And I'll also see you there soon. You don't have to worry about that." Toby merely lowered his head as the chains finished glowing as they blew up, destroying his bodies into pieces. So Mikoto's theory had been right, thought Obito as he looked up at the sky in his dimension. Destroy the head where the seal is and the jutsu is deactivated. Heh, sure beats the hell of trying to seal them away for sure. Obito then fell to his knees as he felt the pain in his chest grow. Hashirama's cells should be able to take care of this, but I just don't give a damn anymore, he thought as the world around him started to crumble. "So that's it, huh?" said Kakashi in a soft tone as he looked at how his surroundings began to crumble all around him. The sky above him was crumbling into pieces as well as the ground beneath his feet. "Yeah," replied Obito. "Without me, this world cannot exist. It seems like this will also be your grave, Kakashi." Kakashi shook his head. "There's nothing for me anymore out there in the real world at any rate. I don't fully understand what's going on, but you're clearly the real Obito. And like me, you have also given up on life now." Obito chuckled. "So you noticed, huh?" "I did," answered Kakashi. "It looks like we both ended up with nothing in the end. What a sad ending." With that, Kakashi looked up just to gaze at the supposed sky of this world only to find it completely empty and dark. Heh, it was fitting that Kakashi closed his eyes. "Mikoto is gonna kill me," thought Obito with a dark smirk as the ground beneath him started to break up completely before he started to laugh. His laughter was the last thing that could be heard as the dimension was completely destroyed. Fire style, Enden. Naruto simply let the flame bullet reach him before repelling it with his Rinnegan. Jiraiya frowned as he noticed this. Nothing seems to be working. Is this the power of the Rinnegan? Not even Nagato could do this, but then again, he also probably could, but I never had the chance to see it, thought Jiraiya, remembering how it had been Naruto that had defeated Nagato. Or who Jiraiya thought had been Nagato at the very least. He was still a bit confused on that part. Had it been Nagato or Yahiko? At any rate, that currently doesn't matter at the moment. They were currently standing on what had once been the Uchiha compound, except it seemed that the village had decided not to rebuild it. And why should they? There were no more Uchiha that were aligned to the village after all. It would have been for nothing. This was something that Itachi noticed as he stood facing a calm-looking Madara a good distance away from where Naruto and Jiraiya were currently fighting. "I can't blame them though," thought Itachi, referring to the fact that the village hadn't rebuilt the Uchiha compound. Madara didn't care about this in the slightest. Naruto brought his sword in front of him. "It's time to test this out." "You know what it can do?" asked Kurama as he himself didn't know. "Yeah," simply answered Naruto. "The memories keep coming back to me for some reason." Jiraiya took a step back as Naruto rushed him. "I can barely see him," thought Jiraiya as he prepared to defend himself. But he wasn't prepared for Naruto throwing the sword towards him. Jiraiya cursed as the sword spun wildly towards him. No choice, thought Jiraiya as his hair grew and began to surround him like a shield. A kunai was useless against that thing as he had already found out. And it wasn't like he was a swordsman either. Naruto smirked as he noticed this. "Just what I was hoping for, you fell for it, you idiot." Sharp spikes grew from Jiraiya's hair as the sword came into contact with it. Jiraiya screamed in pain as the sword actually succeeded in cutting right through his hair defense as well as embedding itself into his left shoulder. "Impossible," thought Jiraiya as he felt himself actually be pushed back from the force of the blow from the sword. Any other sword would have been blocked by his hair. Naruto was in front of him the next moment, his right hand on the dark-colored handle of his sword. Naruto immediately took the sword out from its position on Jiraiya's shoulder with said shinobi screaming in pain. Shinra Tensei. Not again, thought Jiraiya as he was blown back into the debris of what had once been part of the Uchiha compound. Just what was that, thought Jiraiya to himself as he tried to stand from his downed position. That hurt, except it wasn't physical pain. It was a pain that I have never felt before. Of course he was talking about the attack from the sword, not the jutsu. The jutsu had hurt physically. Like a bitch too. Naruto couldn't contain the laughter that escaped his lips as he placed his sword on his shoulder again. I think it's time that I educate you in just what exactly this sword does. And what is that? Said Jiraiya as he tried to stand up but found the action to be extremely painful. But why was that? Naruto's face gained a dark smirk. It's one of its powers that gives it its name. Naruto paused for a few moments as the red streaks that ran through the whole sword, even its handle, began to glow a dark crimson color. Its power is that of taking the energy source from a person, mainly the energy from a person's soul, stated Naruto with a smirk still on his face. That's why its name is the Saikatsu Gakari, the Taker of Life. Jiraiya simply stood there in stunned silence. That is what you just felt, continued Naruto. I just took part of your life source. Even if you have a soul at the moment. That's how you're here after all. But that's just the boring part. The fun is what I can do with this energy. Jiraiya's eyes widened yet again as a crimson energy began to surround Naruto. It felt even more potent than the one of the Kyuubi. But how was that possible? Naruto's face turned into a twisted grin. The fun part is that the sword transfers the energy back into me for my own use. It basically enhances the power that I currently possess. But why does the energy feel so sinister? Wondered Jiraiya, despite the fact that he was currently starting to feel scared once again. If he could stand, Jiraiya would have taken several steps back as the same dark figure from before appeared to surround Naruto yet again, the same dark circular red eyes looking as if they were staring right into his soul. And thinking of the sword's power, Jiraiya realized that those eyes were probably doing just that. There's more to this sword than this. Realized Jiraiya as he finally stood up. Now, shall we resume? Said Naruto with a twisted grin. Jiraiya didn't respond. He could still feel the figure staring right at him. Jiraiya bit his thumb as he proceeded to summon the Elder Toads. It's my only chance, thought Jiraiya. But it would take some time. Now, how to stall? If he could only get the rest of the village to know what was currently happening. Naruto pointed the sword at Jiraiya for a second time. Let's go, sensei. The same dark circular red eyes still stared straight at Jiraiya, who could feel that this was just the beginning of the worst possible outcome that was going to happen. So Obito is dead. Oh, that's too bad. It was probably his choice at any rate. I find it hard to believe that Tobi could have defeated him, but I suppose that's that. Yeah. I'm more interested in Naruto's sword right now though. I didn't even know that it existed until today. That makes two of us. A grin. But now, let's see what an army of men can do to this village. Ha ha ha. Black Zetsu didn't respond as White Zetsu broke down in laughter. He could feel the cells from Hashirama that Madara had injected into Obito stop functioning. It could only mean that Obito was now dead. But that was just the beginning. He didn't even have to look behind him to know that there currently stood a whole sea of white Zetsus. They were currently on top of the Hokage mountain, preparing to begin their attack. It's our turn now. In another part of the village, in what was designated as the war room, a very tense and confusing meeting was currently taking place at the moment. One Might Guy was currently looking around the room from where he currently stood, or well, where he was actually sitting at the moment on the small cloth that was laid beneath him. He was trying to see any familiar faces, but all he could see was one Yuhi Kurenai that was currently sitting next to him on his right. Of course, said Jonin Kunoichi was staring at the empty space of the floor in front of her with a blank look, the same one that she had worn in recent weeks ever since Asuma had died, as well as Kiba. But Guy didn't dwell on her too much. He had come to accept the new Kurenai and, while not too happy with her change in attitude, he knew that there was nothing he could do to cheer her up. But something else did catch his attention, however. Kakashi is not here, realized Guy with a frown after he had surveyed the room that was completely packed by both Jonin and clan heads alike. But not only Kakashi, Niji is also not here, thought Guy with a big frown. He didn't like what had happened with one of his pupils. It seemed that Naruto's betrayal had hit Niji hard, even more so than the other rookies other than perhaps Sakura. Niji had gone back to being what he had been before Naruto had defeated him in the Chunin exams those 3 years ago. But the bigger change had been Hinata as well. Now that he thought of it, Guy also couldn't see said girl in the front of the room with the other clan heads. Maybe something was holding them up. Things had been extremely difficult for the prestigious Hyuga clan, with their clan head being murdered by a rogue shinobi from their own village and then having a 16-year-old girl take charge. Guy wasn't able to continue his train of thought as Tsunade walked into the room by one of the back entrances that stood behind from where her desk stood in front of the large room, also being flanked by both Koharu and Hamura, the 2 advisors. But if she was back from the land of iron, shouldn't Kakashi be here also? And for that matter, Kabuto should be here as well. It wasn't that Guy was particularly fond of the man, but that was the logical assumption after all. Tsunade took her seat that was placed on the other side of the medium-sized wooden desk, both Koharu and Hamura taking seats that were placed on either side of Tsunade's desk with a small desk for each one of them. From Guy's perspective, Koharu sat on Tsunade's right while Hamura sat on her left. I apologize for the rushing in which this meeting was called for, but it can't be helped at the moment, began Tsunade in a commanding tone, the same one that she had used when leading shinobi in both the Second and Third Shinobi Wars. We have an intruder in the village that has already killed 5 of our comrades. Naruto, thought Guy immediately. Of course, that was the only logical choice. No one besides the holder of the legendary Kyuubi and the wielder of the legendary Rinnegan would warrant enough emergency for a meeting such as this to be called for. Well, in this period of time at least. If I may ask, who is this intruder? Questioned Shibi from the front of the room. Uzumaki Naruto, simply responded Tsunade as she closed her eyes momentarily, waiting for the response that would occur from this announcement. Many of the jonin present in the room went on a rampage in their seats after hearing this. In the front of the room, one could hear Tsum grinding her teeth in anger. After all, Naruto had been the one to kill her son. Enough. All of the noise that had begun to occur from Tsunade saying who exactly was inside their village died from the loud command from the same blonde woman. We cannot allow ourselves to fall easily into Naruto's traps anymore, said Tsunade while bringing both of her hands together in front of her. If he's still in the village, which he probably is, we need to act fast to stop Uzumaki Naruto as soon as possible. He needs to be brought in for everything that he has committed as well as to what he's planning on doing. With permission, just who has he already killed? Asked one random jonin from the back of the room. Tsunade sighed, but seeing no other way to say it, she simply answered with, Yuzuki Yugao and her squad of Umbu. Guy saw a flicker of movement to his right, causing him to glance at the direction. What he saw was Kurenai looking forward toward Tsunade, obviously having heard her. That makes another close one gone, thought Guy with a sigh. Of course both Kurenai and Yugao had been close. But apparently Yugao was now dead. That had to be another major slap to the red-eyed beauty. We need to make sure that their deaths weren't for nothing, continued Tsunade, as well as with all of our other fallen comrades that have been killed by the actions of Uzumaki Naruto. We need to stop him. Otherwise, their souls will not rest in peace. This was met with a great voice of approval from the jonin as well as the clan heads. It would seem that they were all on the same page here. But before this could continue, Shizun suddenly appeared in front of Tsunade's desk with said Kunoichi having changed into her Jonin uniform. Currently there was great despair befalling her facial features. "I'm going to regret this," thought Tsunade with an internal sigh as she signaled for her apprentice to say whatever the problem was. Tsunade already knew for a fact that it was a problem that Shizun was going to report to her. That was something that was clear to Tsunade by this point, and she was also willing to bet on it now. "Tsunade-sama, we have multitudes of intruders approaching from the stone faces of the past Hokages," Shizun quickly reported. "Oh, well, that didn't sound too bad. How many targets?" Shizun could only shake her head. "We don't know. The protective barrier around the village estimated it in the tens of thousands if not more." Fucking Shikaku with his questions. Now, that sounded bad. No, way worse than bad. Tsunade could only bring both of her hands on the desk in front of her, causing a multitude of web cracks to appear on its surface. Every person in the room felt pity for the abused piece of furniture. "That's an army right there," muttered Shikaku, extremely troubled by this fact. All those who had heard him had to agree with the lazy Nara. "The barrier has also picked up several strong chakra emanating from where what is left of the Uchiha compound stands," continued Shizun with her report. "One is significantly larger than the others, however." Naruto, thought Tsunade immediately. It had to be him. But what was he doing in the ruins of the Uchiha compound? Of what significance was that place to him? And to whom did the other chakras belong to? "We need to move then," said Tsunade immediately after she had finished with her train of thoughts, standing up from her chair where she had been sitting down. "The main battle groups will go to intercept this force that has trespassed into our village. We need to identify the enemy at once as well as to stop them. I will take a small group of a selected few to accompany me to see what exactly is going on at the Uchiha compound." "Is that understood?" was the immediate response from everyone present in the room. "Then let's get a move on," said Tsunade as all of the Jonin and clan heads filed out of the war room. In all of this, no one but Guy and Shikaku had noticed the absence of the Hyuga clan in the meeting. But with how things were, they decided to put that in the back of their minds for the moment. Hinata stood in front of the entrance of the massive Hyuga compound with Niji right by her side. All members of the Hyuga clan, be them members of the main house or branch members, were currently standing in front of her. "The once prosperous village of Konoha is about to come to an end," began Hinata with the same commanding voice that Tsunade had used with her own shinobi. Niji couldn't actually believe that it was Hinata who he was standing next to at the moment before shaking that thought away. He had more important things to think about than that. The statement from Hinata caused all members of the Hyuga clan to murmur to themselves in confusion. Just what the hell was their supposed clan head talking about? Bad enough that they were already confused about being out here in the first place. Hadn't the Hokage called for an important meeting of all Jonin and clan heads? "Just what do you mean by this, Hinata?" "Sama," asked one Hyuga from the front of the gathered Hyuga, almost having forgotten to add the respectful suffix to the young clan head. Hinata merely shook her head. "It's exactly what it says. Soon, the village known as Konoha will not exist any longer. It will be completely annihilated, wiped from the face of the earth." This caused even more confusion for the Hyuga members. "If that's the case, shouldn't we try to stop that from happening?" asked another Hyuga with a raised eyebrow. "No," answered Hinata without any hesitation. "From this point on, the Hyuga clan owes no allegiance to Konoha anymore." Now that brought a massive shock among all of the Hyuga present. Just what the hell was their clan head thinking of doing? "That's suicide," screamed a third Hyuga in outrage. "Konoha will have our heads if we do that. We don't even stand a chance against the whole village combined." Hinata smirked darkly. "But you've forgotten what I have already told you. This village will cease to exist soon. We are merely taking advantage of the situation." "Just how do you know this?" Hinata shrugged. It's very simple. The man who is going to accomplish this has already told me of it. Not only that, but he's already begun his attack. And who is this person exactly? Uzumaki Naruto, our new leader, answered Hinata with a small smile while thinking of the said Uzumaki. Are you crazy? Screamed some other random Hyuga. Are you seriously asking for us to follow that madman? Hinata narrowed her eyes at the Hyuga who had said this. No, I'm not asking you. I'm ordering you. And what if we refuse? Said the Hyuga who had spoken the first time with both a challenging tone and look. This was mirrored by all other Hyuga present. Hinata narrowed her eyes even further before she brought her hands together into the ram seal. Then I'll activate the curse seal placed on every branch member who will in turn bring the rest of you down in order to stop the pain, who will then be placed with the same seal, making you all my followers in the end. This is simply the easy and less painful way of the two. The elders will never allow this, screamed another Hyuga in outrage. Hinata waved her hands in dismissal. They have already given me their full support. They agree with me that following Konoha will not benefit this clan any further. And they're now dead, so they can't deny any of this, finished Hinata in her mind. Before the meeting had taken place, she herself had taken the honor of killing the fossils that made the council of advisors of the Hyuga clan. They were going to be useless in the coming battle, and well, she didn't like them either. Also, it wasn't like she cared for the Hyuga clan at this point. She was merely using them because Naruto needed it for his plan to succeed. After that, they could all go to hell as far as she was concerned. While all of this took place, Niji simply stood there with his arms crossed, an unreadable look on his face. All of the Hyuga present could only bow their heads in resignation. It was either this or they all got the cage bird seal placed on them, which would ensure a terrible plan to befall them all. Besides, if even the elders of the clan were going through with this as well, they had no choice but to follow. Seeing this brought a pleased smirk on Hinata's face as she brought her hands back to her sides. I'm glad that you all saw a reason at the end. You will not regret your choice, that I can guarantee you. No one responded to her. Hinata turned to look out towards the gate of the Hyuga compound to where the rest of the village stood. Then, let's go. It's time, thought Niji as he also faced to look at the rest of the village. My revenge starts here and now. Kabuto could only bring his left fist to the ground next to him, punching it with all the strength that he could muster. He was currently a very unhappy, snake man at the moment. He gritted his teeth in anger as one of the beads in the board in front of him cracked into tiny pieces. Kabuto already knew what that meant, and he did not like it one bit. Not only did I lose my control over Madara, but I now also lost Tobi as well, screamed Kabuto to himself within his mind. His teleportation jutsu would have come in handy later on. Damn it. But the even bigger loss was Madara. Kabuto had thought that the problem that he had faced in the Land of Iron when he had lost control of Madara was over, that it wouldn't happen again. But instead of that, the complete opposite occurred. I've been tricked, thought Kabuto in anger as he recalled the scroll that he had taken from the ruins of Yuzu in the underground tunnels beneath what had once been the main Uzumaki compound. The scroll lied to me, or was it something else? Kabuto shook those thoughts away for the moment. He might have lost Madara, which was a great loss indeed, but he still had a whole army of revived shinobi at his disposal. I still have the Nidaime Hokage along with the other past Kages after all, thought Kabuto as he began to calm down. Getting angry wouldn't get him anything, he needed to stay focused here. Kabuto paused as the snake by his side informed him of what exactly was happening on the surface. It would seem that a whole army of white Zetsus had just arrived. So, they used Tobi's original plan then, realized Kabuto with a small grin. Clever. He then brought his hands together into a hand seal. I'll see how things turn up there before I join in. But for now, I'll take control of Itachi. He's my next best pawn that I currently possess. After all, I wasn't able to obtain the necessary genetic materials in order to revive Nagato. A pity, but I'll have to do with what I have. With that, Kabuto closed his eyes as he concentrated. Jiraiya took a step back as a wild wind began to blow around the area as the crimson energy surrounding Naruto began to spin even more widely around said individual, preventing Jiraiya from seeing very clearly. Just what is that energy, thought Jiraiya in complete frustration. Naruto said that the sword collects the energy from that of a soul, but I'm pretty sure that my soul is not this rotten. Naruto still possessed the twisted grin on his face as he looked at how frustrated Jiraiya was getting. Not only that, but Naruto could also see fear present within his old teacher. The thought caused Naruto's grin to become even more twisted, if that was even possible. At last, after all of that waiting, he was finally able to just release everything that he had hid deep within his heart. Jiraiya still had his hands clasped together, trying to gather the necessary chakra in order to summon the two Toad Elders. But I'm going to have to buy myself some time before I can summon them. Come on, Tsunade. Somehow, know what's happening here so that you can get your fine ass over here in order to help me out. Jiraiya came out of his thoughts as Naruto wordlessly rushed at him again, the dark energy still surrounding him. But now knowing what the sword could do, Jiraiya was prepared to avoid it at all cost. The second before Naruto reached him, a cloud of smoke surrounded Jiraiya. Summoning, thought Naruto as he stopped himself, realizing what Jiraiya had done. Looking up, Naruto saw again for a second time the figure of Gamabunta. Gamabunta let out a puff of smoke from his pipe. Again with this crap. He muttered, but thanks to his size, everyone could hear him. Sorry about this, Gamabunta, began Jiraiya with a serious look on his face as he looked down to gaze at his old student, but I'm currently in need of your assistance at the moment. That's what Minato said as well, commented Gamabunta, before I was almost turned into a fried toad. Minato, said Jiraiya with a confused look but wasn't allowed to question the large toad whose head he was currently standing on when Naruto appeared right behind him, the two standing back to back with each other. I told you to make this fun for me, Jiraiya, stated Naruto in nothing but a whisper. But so far, you're doing a horrible job at it. I could have already killed you multiple times by now. Despite the fact that Jiraiya had faced death numerous times in the past, he couldn't stop the sweat of fear that started to appear on his forehead. It was like he was talking to the god of death himself right now. The crimson energy around Naruto began to move on its own, backhanding Jiraiya off Gamabunta's head and into the ground below. You vermin, exclaimed Gamabunta in anger. You're of no importance to me now, said Naruto as he brought his sword upward, ready to slice the toad boss who had once been his ally. You'll pay for what you did to us, stated Gamabunta as he tried to shake the silver-haired Jinchuriki off him. A few seconds later though, he came to a complete stop as Naruto had planted his sword right into the toad's head. Now, give me your energy, exclaimed Naruto in his head. As Jiraiya made to get up from his spot on the ground, his hands still clasped together, right before his very eyes Gamabunta began to age and wither like a flower right before his eyes. It wasn't long until the giant toad simply turned into ash. So this is what happens when all of your energy from your soul is consumed, thought Jiraiya with a slight gulp. He could have done that to me already as well. Naruto jumped off the now dead Gamabunta as said toad's ashes began to be blown away by the wind, only for him to land right in front of Jiraiya. Naruto turned to look at his one-time sensei with a now bored look on his face. You know, you're really beginning to bore me. If you're not going to do better than this, then I'll just simply kill you now and be on my way of doing the same thing with every other person in the village. Jiraiya frowned momentarily before he inhaled once more. Fire style, Dai Enden. Simply making the jutsu bigger is not going to mean that it will work, thought Naruto as he simply brought his freed hand in order to absorb the attack. But what he wasn't prepared for was for Jiraiya to appear from within the jutsu itself. Oh, thought Naruto with a raised eyebrow, ducking downwards in order to dodge the kick that was sent his way from the Sennin. Better, but not good enough, thought Naruto as he appeared in front of the now surprised Jiraiya, gathering a multitude of the crimson energy into his left hand, which was not the one currently holding the sword. Jiraiya screamed in pain as the now compressed form of energy hit him straight in the gut, sending him propelling backwards a good 20 feet with him landing on his back. That was just like the Rasengan, thought Jiraiya in pain. But it hurts a lot more than a regular one. Jiraiya tried to stand up but found that his body didn't allow him to do so just yet. Damn it, I need to make sure that my hands stay clasped together. But I'm almost there. My Sage mode is my only chance of defeating Naruto at the moment. But he wasn't allowed to rest for too long as he was sent flying backwards some more from the shockwaves that were sent by Naruto by his screaming into the crimson energy that surrounded him. Just how many uses are there of that energy, thought Jiraiya in even more pain as he finally managed to get to at least to his knees with his ears stinging like a bitch. That was just like a banshee. But as he looked at the wild and untamed looking crimson energy that continued to spin all around Naruto, who was beginning to advance towards him, Jiraiya realized that he had probably not seen anything as of yet. On the other side of the destroyed Uchiha compound, two blurs could be seen as they continued to clash with each other. One was holding a gunbai while the other one was holding a simple kunai. But that didn't mean that he was any less dangerous with it. As the two blurs clashed with each other one more time, they suddenly became visible. Madara was on one side while Itachi was on the other, the two trying to push back the other back as they stood face to face, gunbai clashing with kunai. Even your skill with a simple kunai is impressive, commented Madara with a small amount of praise in his voice. I'm the type of shinobi that prefers to do things in the dark, replied Itachi in a stoic manner. Madara smirked at him. Oh. You mean like when you sacrificed yourself for this rotting village while everyone else thought of you as a criminal? Itachi didn't respond to that. Instead, he brought his kunai backwards, ending the clashing with Madara's gunbai. Then he brought his left foot forward, sending a powerful kick towards the gunbai, which made Madara be pushed back for a few meters in his surprised state. Not bad, said Madara as Itachi jumped backwards to put some distance between the two. Itachi's eyes widened partially as wood began to grow in front of Madara, taking the form of a giant tree with Madara now standing on top of said tree. Now, shall we continue, said Madara with another smirk. Before he could respond, Itachi's eyes changed, looking as if they contained no life at all now. It was like he was a walking corpse now. Madara narrowed his eyes on this. So, Kabuto has taken over now. Itachi's normal Sharingan shifted to his Mangekyo, making his Susanoo in its complete form come to life all around him. So, now things get serious, thought Madara with anticipation. Yasaka no Magatama. Madara watched as several Magatamas bound together by a thread of chakra began spinning at a fast rate towards his location on top of the tree. Madara's own Susanoo flared into life and used both of its swords to deflect and to send the attack flying back towards the now possessed Itachi. Seeing this, Itachi's Susanoo brought its shield forward, succeeding in blocking off the attack. That shield is going to be a problem, realized Madara as he looked down at the unmoving Itachi. What a shame. For someone like you, Itachi, to be reduced to a simple mindless tool. But that's how things turned out, I suppose. Giant wooden spikes began to come out of the ground all over the area, completely surrounding the area where Madara and Itachi were currently fighting. Let's see how you handle this, Kabuto, thought Madara as he brought his hands together. Tajimo Kutan Bunshin. Itachi still held the blank look on his face as a large number of wood-based clones of Madara appeared all around said Uchiha on top of the giant tree. Not only that, but the clones also had their own Susanoo activated, although in its simple form. As I thought, this will not be so simple, thought Itachi, or rather Kabuto, who was currently taking control of Itachi's body. Shall we continue? Said Madara with another stoic look, a look that all of his clones also wore. Itachi readied himself. In the one peaceful village of Konoha, things were now the complete opposite of the word peaceful at the moment. And why was that? Maybe it had something to do with the fact that every civilian in sight could be seen taken down by an army of white individuals. Said individuals cutting though anyone who would come near them. The civilians could only run for their lives, trying to get into one of the evacuation sites. The white Zetsus were on rooftops as well as on the ground. Fires had broken out through the whole village at the cause of this surprise attack. This was a sight that one Haruno Sakura would never have thought that she would see again as she ran through a deserted and destroyed street behind Shizune and two other shinobi. Their names were Aoba and Genma if Sakura recalled correctly. Well, she at least recognized Genma as the proctor of the final phase of the Chunin exam all those 3 years ago, which now seemed like a dream to her. In her mind, things had still made sense back then. The village had already been destroyed once by Naruto, so for it to happen again. No, screamed Sakura in her mind, her face becoming determined. I can't let that happen. She was broken out of her thoughts as a blur suddenly appeared in between where Aoba and Genma were running. Who, thought Sakura with wide eyes as she came to a halt. Hakusha Kaiten. Both Aoba and Genma grunted in pain as the spinning attack known only to the Hyuga clan hit them both straight on, sending them both flying backwards into a different deserted building. Niji, said Sakura with wide eyes when she noticed who had been responsible. Shizune for her part was also in shock as she turned to look at whom they had both thought were their ally. Niji didn't respond to her. He was about to go after Sakura until someone else landed beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder in order to stop him. If you don't mind, said Hinata with narrowed eyes as she looked at Sakura, I would want to kill her myself. Niji for his part spared Hinata a glance before turning away from Sakura in order to face a still shocked Shizune. Do whatever you want, simply replied Niji in response. Shaking her head in order to get over her shock, Shizune screamed, just what is the meaning of these two? What do you think you're doing? It doesn't concern you, responded Niji. Just know that the Hyuga clan is no longer part of Konoha. We're on Naruto-kun's side now, finished Hinata with a smirk. Sakura gasped. But why? Hinata could only shrug. Because I love him. Niji didn't offer her a response. So you're traitors then, stated Shizune with narrowed eyes as she prepared to fight the now rogue Jonin in front of her. Tsunade-sama needs to know of this. Well, if that's all that you wanted to know, shall we get started, said Hinata as she activated her Byakugan. Sakura's hands turned into fists as she looked at Hinata. Yeah, let's. Niji, who already had his Byakugan activated, simply looked at Shizune with a cold look. All over the rest of the village, the rest of the rookies along with every other shinobi were currently facing the same problem. At first, they had only been fighting an army of white individuals that were not that tough to take down. But now, the Hyuga clan shows up fighting alongside them. This made the Hyuga members have the element of surprise in the beginning, which resulted in them managing to kill many unsuspecting Konoha shinobi. This betrayal hit many Konoha shinobi deep in their hearts as well. On top of the Hokage mountain, White Zetsu could only watch this with glee as he gazed at the destruction that his other selves were causing. Ha ha ha, he laughed. This is better than I thought it would be. Too bad that Obito missed this. It happened, said Black Zetsu in response from his side. He most likely didn't want anything to do with this. He was also a mystery, even to me. I think that's why Madara liked him the most. It wasn't easy to see what exactly was on his mind most of the time. But Obito did his part well. That's all that was required. White Zetsu grinned slightly. I wonder what Mikoto is gonna do once she finds out that Obito is now dead. Black Zetsu paused at this. Yes, that will be worth seeing, he finally said. White Zetsu turned his full attention back to the currently attacked village of Konoha. For now, we should simply enjoy the show that is in front of us. Black Zetsu had to agree with his counterpart on that. Hari Jigaku. Naruto merely spun his still glowing sword in front of him, completely cutting down all of the hardened needle-like hair that was shot at him. If he did miss any, the crimson energy that still surrounded him deflected them on its own. Jiraiya took a step back as he panted slightly. So far, he had tried about every trick that he knew to keep stalling for time in order to summon the Elder Toads. But Naruto easily defended himself against all of them. Naruto could only sigh, his excitement from before having completely died off. I don't know why you're still keeping your hands like that, but this has completely bored me now. It seems that this is apparently the best you can do. In that case, Naruto brought his sword forward. I'm going to just kill you now, Jiraiya. Jiraiya gritted his teeth in anger at just being brushed off like that. But he had to admit that the silver-haired Naruto had a point. He had defended against his attacks as if they were nothing. And well, to Naruto, they probably were nothing. Just one more minute, thought Jiraiya in desperation. I just need one more minute, and I'll have the necessary chakra. Come on, Kami. I've never asked you for much, but at least do that much for me. And his prayer seemed to have been answered as both he and Naruto turned to look to their right, well in Jiraiya's case it was the left, towards the direction of the village to see an incoming and very pissed off Tsunade who was followed by Guy, Tsum and her partner dog, Ibiki, and surprisingly Irika. Oh, said Naruto with a dark grin, now it's a party. Tsunade could only scowl as she stopped a few distance away in between where Naruto and Jiraiya were currently fighting. Heim, muttered Jiraiya. So she did come after all. So this is where you were. You little brat, growled Tsum in anger. Both Guy and Ibiki merely stayed silent. And Irika for his part could only look at Naruto in desperation and sadness. So this really is all you're doing, said Tsunade in obvious anger. Naruto simply shrugged as a response. Guilty as charged, he said with a dark grin. Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya for a moment and immediately understood as to what was going on and who was responsible as well. Kabuto, little bastard. So, began Naruto as he shouldered his sword, are you here to give me a better challenge than what Jiraiya has given me so far? Because I really hope that's the case since I'm extremely bored over here. We're here to talk you out of this nonsense, answered Irika as he stepped forward. Speak for yourself, muttered Tsum. Naruto shook his head in obvious amusement at what Irika had just said. You're still so stupid, Irika. I've already told you that I'm not going to change. I've already decided that this is the path that I want to walk in. Your only choice in order to stop me is to kill me, nothing more. I don't believe that, said Irika as he continued to walk towards Naruto. This was the whole reason that he had volunteered to come along in the first place. Because this is where Naruto most likely was at the moment and thankfully, his guess had been correct. If you truly mean that, then you'll have to dash. Irika didn't get to finish as Naruto was in front of him the very next second, sword in hand which he had used to stab Irika straight in the heart. Do what? Said Naruto with another twisted grin. His excitement was beginning to grow again. Kill you? Well, I already beat you to that. Do you want me to do something else? Irika, screamed Tsunade but knew that it was too late for the once simple academy teacher. She shouldn't have ever agreed for him to come along. Irika's face was twisted in both surprise and sadness before it completely turned into ash along with the rest of his body. The old Naruto is truly gone, thought Jiraiya sadly before his face hardened. But now, I'm prepared. Is that proof enough for you, Bachan? Said Naruto in mockery. Because if it isn't, I can think of many other ways to show it to you. Before Tsunade could respond, there was a sudden change in the dark atmosphere. That's quite enough, Naruto. Looking to where Jiraiya currently stood, Naruto saw the changed form of who had once been his teacher. His face was more toad-like than human now. Not only that, but he now had two small toads resting on both of his shoulders. Oh, thought Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Maybe it wasn't a bad idea to not kill him immediately after all. He finished with another dark grin forming on his face. Is this what you were planning on doing all along? Asked Naruto as he shouldered his sword once more. Then, the dark and crimson energy began to grow, spinning even more widely around Naruto. If that's the case, I hope it will serve to give me a good challenge, Jiraiya. Tsunade shielded her eyes as the wind began to pick up all around the nearby area, an act which was mirrored by Guy, Ibiki, and Tsum. Jiraiya-chan, is that? Asked Fukasaku as he also shielded his eyes. Just what is that dark energy? Questioned Shima from Jiraiya's left shoulder. Jiraiya could only shake his head. I don't know yet, but it doesn't matter. I have to stop him, and I'm going to need your help in order to do this. You can count on us, was Shima's immediate response. Fukasaku nodded his head in agreement to that. Thank you, muttered Jiraiya. Jiraiya, thought Tsunade, still shielding her eyes. Let's go, sensei, screamed Naruto from within the dark crimson-colored energy. The dark figure from before seemed to get even more darker with its circular red eyes getting even more intense as well. Just what is that thing? Wondered Jiraiya, sensing the extremely dark and massive power radiating from Naruto's sword now that he was in Sage mode. The dark figure seemed to grin darkly at him.